It was Christmas Eve, 1983, and the town of Sable Creek lay blanketed in snow, its cobblestone streets silent under a thick coat of frost. Each house along the lane gleamed with festoons of twinkling lights, wreaths hung on every door, and the scent of freshly baked pies wafted from chimneys. But for Daniel Grant, this was a Christmas Eve unlike any other. Daniel, in his early 30s, had recently moved to the remote town of Sable Creek, hoping to escape the bustling noise of the city. He rented a modest cottage on the outskirts, a place that seemed a world away from the skyscrapers and chaos he had left behind. The peace of the countryside was something he'd longed for, but now, as the evening shadows lengthened and the stars began to shimmer overhead, something gnawed at his heart. This holiday season felt strange, empty, even. The nostalgia he'd expected to feel as Christmas approached was nowhere to be found. He had left behind his family, friends, and the annual traditions, and here, surrounded by the serene winter landscape, he felt more isolated than ever. There was no one to share the magic of the season with. The silence that had once been soothing now seemed oppressive, a void he couldn't fill. Daniel had grown weary of his own thoughts. With nothing but the quiet to keep him company, he decided to take a walk, hoping the cool night air would clear his head. He slipped on his coat, grabbed a scarf, and stepped out into the crisp night. The streets were empty, save for the occasional car passing by, headlights flickering like distant stars. As he wandered deeper into the woods that bordered the town, the comforting hum of civilization began to fade. It was just him, the snow, and the distant sound of his boots crunching on the frozen earth. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of wind through the branches. The moon hung high, casting an ethereal glow on the landscape. It was as if the entire world had slowed down, holding its breath. But then, as he ventured further into the woods, something shifted. The night grew stiller, and an inexplicable pull tugged at his heart, guiding him toward an unseen destination. Daniel didn't know what urged him forward, but he couldn't ignore the strange sense of being called. He wandered deeper into the forest, the path narrowing with every step. And then, there it was, a faint light, flickering like a distant star. It came from beyond a cluster of trees, a soft, shimmering glow. Daniel's curiosity piqued. He was a man who didn't believe in superstition or fantasy, but something about this light, this anomaly in the otherwise silent and still woods, was too compelling to ignore. The trees parted as he stepped into the clearing, and there, standing before him, was an ancient stone arch. It looked otherworldly, its stone surface etched with intricate runes and symbols that seemed to shimmer with a faint, ethereal light. The glow from the arch pulsated, swirling in a pattern that felt almost alive, like the aurora borealis. Daniel hesitated for a moment, struck by the absurdity of it all. This couldn't be real. How could there be something so inexplicable here, in the woods on Christmas Eve? But the pull was undeniable. He moved toward the arch, mesmerized by its beauty, by the way it seemed to bend and shimmer in the moonlight. He reached out a hand to touch the stone, and the moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him. It was unlike anything he had ever felt, a jolt of warmth that spread through his body, followed by a strange, tingling sensation. The world around him shifted, and the air grew thick, as though time itself had bent. Suddenly, everything went dark. Daniel's heart raced as he opened his eyes. The world around him had transformed completely. Gone was the peaceful winter forest of Sable Creek, replaced by a barren, desolate landscape. The sky above was a blood-red hue, and the ground beneath him was cracked, with jagged, lifeless rocks scattered across the terrain. Towering mountains rose in the distance, their peaks obscured by a swirling mist. The air was thick with a strange heaviness, as though the atmosphere itself was dying. For a moment, Daniel simply stared, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his pulse quickened. This was no dream. This was real. He stumbled to his feet, feeling disoriented, his mind racing to understand how he had ended up in such an alien place. What is this place? He muttered under his breath. As he stood there, trying to make sense of it all, a shadow moved in the distance. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he turned to face it. What emerged from the mist was a creature unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It was a massive being, taller than any man, with the body of a wolf and the face of a nightmare. Its fur was as dark as the night sky, its eyes glowing with an eerie yellow light. Clawed hands dripped with something that shimmered in the light, and its presence seemed to cast a palpable fear over the land. You shouldn't be here, the creature growled in a voice that seemed to reverberate in Daniel's chest, as though it were spoken not by its mouth, but by the very air itself. Daniel's heart raced as the creature took a step forward, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath him. He took a step back, instinctively. The beast's eyes narrowed, its lips curling back to reveal rows of sharp, jagged teeth. This was no ordinary creature. It was something ancient, something born of this twisted realm. I don't know where I am, Daniel stammered, trying to make sense of the situation.
I was just in the woods.
The creature's lips twitched into something that could have been a grin, though it seemed more like a twisted sneer. You are no longer in the woods, human. You are in the realm between. The words hung heavy in the air, and Daniel's mind whirled. The realm between? What did that even mean? Before Daniel could process the words, the creature lunged at him with a speed that belied its size. Its claws slashed through the air, barely missing him as he ducked to the side. The ground shook with each of its powerful steps as it tried again, its claws swiping just inches from Daniel's face. Panic surged through his veins, and his instincts kicked in. He turned and ran, pushing his legs harder, the fear of the creature propelling him forward. He ran for what seemed like an eternity, the creature's growls echoing in the distance. But ahead, he saw a flicker of light, a faint, welcoming glow in the midst of the darkness. Without thinking, he sprinted toward it, his breath ragged in his chest. His feet stumbled as he pushed through the barren landscape, the twisted rock formations appearing to close in on him. Finally, he reached the source of the light. It was a doorway, not unlike the arch he had found in the woods. This one was massive, built from ancient stone and adorned with glowing symbols. Daniel hesitated for a moment before pushing the heavy door open, stepping into what appeared to be a cavernous chamber. Inside, the air was warmer, and the oppressive atmosphere of the realm between seemed to lift slightly. At the center of the room stood a figure, draped in flowing robes that shimmered with a faint, silver light. Their face was obscured by a hood, but there was an undeniable aura of power surrounding them. "You've crossed the threshold," the figure said, their voice resonating with an ancient, otherworldly echo. Daniel tried to catch his breath. "Where am I? What is this place? How do I get back?" The figure stepped closer, and with each movement, the air seemed to shimmer, as if bending to their will. "You have entered the realm between, Daniel Grant. A place where time, reality, and possibility converge. This is a place that exists beyond the boundaries of the known world. And now, you are part of something far greater than yourself." Daniel blinked in disbelief. "I don't understand. I just wanted to get away from the noise. I never asked for this." The figure studied him silently for a moment. "Few are ever prepared for the weight of the choices they must make here. But you have been chosen. The fate of this realm, and many others, rests in your hands." Daniel's mind reeled as the weight of the situation slowly sank in. He had been thrust into something far beyond his understanding, and yet there was no turning back now. What had started as a lonely Christmas Eve walk had turned into an impossible journey, a journey that would decide the fate of worlds. With a deep breath, Daniel looked up at the figure, determination settling in his chest. "I don't know how," he said, his voice steady, "but I'll do whatever it takes." The figure nodded, a faint smile crossing their lips. "Then it begins."